Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept, a strategy, something that is worth exploring and worth doing with respect to fitness and exercise programs for the autism and neurodivergent population, and explore this topic, hopefully making it more intellectually, cognitively digestible and usable for you, the viewer. And since you're viewing this now, please stop for a second, pause, and then once you unpause, like, subscribe so that you never miss any of these videos, and of course share it with someone for whom it might make a difference in their programming. And if you're ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro right now, you can head on over to autismfitness.com and join the Movement for Movement, or learn about the Movement for Movement and download the Pro Course Syllabus. Anyway, in this edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, I'm going to be talking about the implementation or the utilization of applied behavior analysis in fitness programming. You know, when I started my career at this point, well, if you're watching this years from now, it'll be more years from now, but when I started my career 23 years ago, the reason that I was able to have early success with my athletes who were teenagers on the autism spectrum at the time is because I had this dual background in both exercise science, particularly strength and conditioning, and then training in concepts of applied behavior analysis, and create a bridge between the two, because there are so many crossovers and similarities, and I don't think that I talk about it enough, but it is important. So the field of applied behavior analysis is the study and practice of developing positive supports for all individuals. It happens to be one of the integrative and most successful methods of providing not only behavior support, but education for the ASD population. And of course, when we look at the field and the practice and the science of it, science evolves over time, and modern ABA is quite different from old school Skinnerian, or even, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. Everything is discrete trial training and everything is puzzles. And that is a gross overstatement, but I jest a little bit there. So anyway, when we're talking about the intersection and some of the interactive or similar qualities of exercise science and ABA, we can always start with goal setting. So what is the goal that we want to achieve? In past videos, I've talked about independence and what that actually means with respect to our autism and neurodivergent athletes attaining certain skills and milestones with exercise, right? So when we quantify that and break it down, we can look at it from the perspective of a task analysis. Right? Task analysis is something that we're very familiar with in applied behavior analysis. So breaking down the skill set into smaller little skill sets and checking them off. Now, sometimes we have an exercise that is more all or nothing, but the cool thing about exercise is that we can always do a modified variation of a particular movement pattern. We just have to make sure that we understand what the earliest or what the most modified starting point is without losing the effect of the exercise. So when we're looking at a push-up, for example, we can have the athlete do a push-up with their hands and upper body starting on a box and their knees on the floor. But a wall push-up is something that I typically, well, not even typically, something that I don't recommend, because I don't think that it generalizes well or is a good starting point for the incline push-up that we utilize in autism fitness programming. So we want a starting point, a modification that builds the skill in the way that it needs to be built. Similar in applied behavior analysis, we want to look at the target skill. So ultimately, what do we want the athlete to achieve independently, and what is our roadmap for getting there? Second interactive quality or similarity or crossover, whatever we're going to call it, is going to be data collection. How are we tracking progress? All right. So when we are looking at an exercise, we can always look at the reliable three: that's sets, repetitions, and resistance, particularly when we're looking at strength training. So these are the variables that we want to increase over time, because it's a demonstration and a representation that the athlete is developing strength and stamina and stability skills as well. So the way to consistently track that is obviously to take data on it, because we don't want to just guess at where the athlete is going to be next week when we are coaching them this week. We want, again, a roadmap for that, and taking data is essential in order to figure out what's going to happen next session. Now, of course, every session may differ a little bit. So sometimes an athlete is capable of doing 4 sets of an overhead press. However, this week they're feeling a little bit off, or they're getting dysregulated, so we only get in 2 reps. But we still understand that athlete's current baseline. We know that that athlete is capable of doing 4 sets of that exercise without the movement pattern breaking down with a specific resistance level or a certain amount of weight. So when we know what the athlete's baseline skill is, what their current capability is, we can match as best we can each session to that particular level of performance. And of course, over time, we want that trend line to go up. We want the athlete to be able to do more sets of more repetitions with more weight within reason. Of course, there's going to be a point at which that plateaus, but we're not going to really know that unless we are taking data on it. So let's move on from the physical. Of course, in Autism Fitness, I say of course, like you all know, and some of you might, but in Autism Fitness, we use our PAC profile, physical, adaptive, and cognitive, to assess and address each area of skill that is inherently critical to performance in fitness or exercise. If we look at it from an adaptive perspective, that positive behavior support is absolutely necessary to address, because oftentimes, and this is probably, as I've mentioned in the past, this is the question that I get most, is not even about the exercises themselves, but how do we motivate our ASD and neurodivergent athletes, if they're not motivated already, to participate in the fitness program. And of course, I get to pull out 2 or 3, even 4 of some of the most studied and replicated and reputable practices in applied behavior analysis, and that would be behavior-specific praise and providing choice or autonomy, and also individualized feedback for the athlete. So behavior-specific praise, we always phrase that as great job, now fill in the blank, because great job is not enough. Have you ever been great jobbed almost to the point of numbness? Like, great job this and great job that, and that was a good job this and that was a good job. Like, it's just good job, good job, good job, good job. The problem with that is it is unspecific and it is vague. So good job doing what? Behavior-specific praise is one of the favorite strategies that I take from applied behavior analysis and utilize with my athletes, because not only can it be a significant reinforcer for the athlete, because it focuses particularly on something that they are doing really well in the moment, but we can also use it as a teaching tool. So instead of over-explaining what I want the athlete to do with a particular exercise, so okay, first get your feet in the rings, and then make sure that your chin is pointed forward, and then make sure that your elbows are down. Way too much. You're over-explaining it to anybody, neurodivergent or otherwise. Instead, I can use behavior-specific praise as a feedback mechanism, and a very successful one at that, for my athlete while or immediately after they've completed that particular exercise. So after that really challenging set of overhead presses, awesome getting your arms all the way up and bringing them down slowly. That looked great, because the athlete is either in the process of doing it or they've just completed that exercise, so they have that kinesthetic awareness. They have that experience of having completed that exercise. So I can tie it immediately or almost immediately to that experience or to that exercise. So it becomes a really powerful tool as opposed to explaining everything in the beginning of a session or even in the beginning of an exercise. I want to keep my direction short and concise, and then give the athlete feedback and use those teachable moments while the athlete is performing the exercise or immediately after they're performing the exercise. And talking about reinforcement, another strategy derived from applied behavior analysis that we utilize is pairing. I want to pair novel or even a little bit aversive stimuli, i.e. the exercises themselves, with reinforcement, and behavior-specific praise is a fantastic way to do that. Pairing just means that we're taking one stimulus or one thing or one event or one task and pairing it with something else, in this case, reinforcement, something that is going to increase the likelihood that the athlete is going to perform that exercise again. And astoundingly, we don't have to typically pull from 100 different potential reinforcers. We can usually use behavior-specific praise, access to breaks, or access to preferred activities. So let's say our athlete loves doing sandbell slams. All right, first scoop throws, and then they can do sandbell slams, which is completely appropriate given that we're doing fitness right now. So it syncs right in to the exercise session itself, which leads me to the other concept that I mentioned, choice or autonomy. When we give the athlete control within reason around what exercises they want to do and when in the session, it increases their engagement and can create a much better environment and a much better working relationship between the coach, whoever that may be, could be you, and the athlete as well. So rather than say, you have to do this, or you need to do this right now, or here's your program, this is what you've got to do, we are removing the have to part of it, and we are introducing the not only the premise, but the opportunity for the athlete to advocate for what they want to do first, second, and sometimes third. And that choice, that autonomy, that control gives the athlete oftentimes a much lower anxiety experience, because control will alleviate or at least reduce anxiety and increases their motivation to participate because they chose this exercise first. So choice or autonomy is yet another strategy derived from applied behavior analysis that we integrate into a session for maximal performance, both physically and then from a motivational standpoint for our athletes. So all of these things that I've been discussing, from behavior-specific praise to choice, to data collection, to discovering baseline and where the athlete is starting, are mechanisms that are going to lead to the best possible session-to-session performance, not only of the athlete, but as you or me as a coach as well. So that's why these two things are fused together, because the best practices that we take from behavior analysis and positive behavior support in coaching are going to be absolutely essential in meeting our athletes where they are at and using those exercises that we know are going to be effective, our strengthening exercises, push, pull, squat, hinge, and carry. They are only going to be as effective as they are coached and implemented. So we are utilizing the scaffolding of our ABA concepts in order to deliver that programming. The programming is the easy part. Okay, 3 or 4 sets of squats, 3 or 4 sets of overhead presses, 3 or 4 sets of band or cable rows. That's the easy part. But introducing and then implementing it on a regular basis takes an understanding of how to support that athlete best, how they are best motivated, how to include them in the process so that there's a reciprocal coach and athlete relationship, and so that this is something that they can enjoy and participate in long term. We don't want fitness to be a short-term activity because it's really a lifelong pursuit. You don't do fitness for 3 or 4 sessions and then say, okay, we're fit, so we're done now. It's something that provides a very high quality of life if it is consistent for an individual through their childhood and adolescence and teen and adulthood. And it's not to say that there's no point at which someone can't start, but if we have this for the majority of someone's lifetime, it really is going to not only prevent a lot of potential, medical and lifestyle related complications, but it is going to be proactive in maintaining, supporting, and developing independence in activities of daily living. So I hope this has been halfway illuminating in the relationship between fitness and behavior analysis, how we utilize some of the concepts and strategies in order to create the best possible fitness programs and adaptive PE programs for our ASD and neurodivergent population. Would love to know what you think. Would be interested to hear your experiences and answer any questions that you have about this. You can leave those in the comments below. And if you're ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, then head on over to autismfitness.com. You can join the worldwide movement for movement and get your certification started as soon as you register. You'll have access to all of the online coursework, and then you can meet me or one of our other master pros for your full day practical, where you get the hands-on, feet-on, brains-on training that you and your athletes deserve. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. Thank you very much for watching.